So here's one example. You'll see the calligraphy stylus have this split down the side. This is where the reservoir actually holds the ink. This actually splits apart when you dip it into the ink well. But one stylus that looks like that compared to one that looks like this, one will be a very thin pointed line. The other one is going to be super thick. And that's what we see with lettering. Most of the times, people, they'll use the point, and then when they try, I'm already thinking about it, when they try to, write their name, you'll get this scratching feeling, like nails on a chalkboard. Ugh, you won't like it. But that's why a lot of people switch to these flat types. Now, there are different angles, too, that you can use. Lettering, typography, a lot of people do that, too. It's really cool videos that they post online for that. It really takes a skill, but learning how to use them in the direction, that's all that it's about in marking, how you use those tools, all right? So if you don't have that one, you can try out just the points. I do have some spare inks as well. We will try a little demonstration with some washes with ink. If you are very careful with your inks, you will not spill them on yourself because you'll see that they are water soluble, but that doesn't mean that the stain will come out. Okay, so be very careful. A couple things I want to mention first about ink. There's two real different types here. Notice the difference between these two containers? And this is just a jar. I can unscrew the lid, and then that's all there is. It's open, I can use it. This one, it's like a jar, right? I open it up. But what is this? It's a dropper. Where my fingers are actually touching on that, it's plastic, so I can actually, it's sort of like a baster. If I press it down, it'll pick up all the ink. It's fully loaded. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'll do it on the paper later on for the demonstration, but you will see, you can squirt it out and it'll look like I've struck oil. It just comes out. You can do that as many times as possible. One little trick that I do like about the waterproof or water-soluble ink, I use it up a lot. So when I get down to the very end, I actually dilute it with water. And when we think about charcoal, it's actually the same material. This ground up into a fine powder, mixed with water. That's what you get here. So some people, they'll actually mash up their own charcoal. Make sure you're wearing a mask if you decide to go old school, or else when you sneeze or blow your nose, it's going to look like you're a coal miner. I kid you not. Some of you that have had my drawing classes know this, right? But that's all it is. It's liquid charcoal. And so you could try that as long as you get it ground up really fine. There are a variation of blacks, one that's actually glossy, one that's actually flat. But overall, if you have this one compared to this one, it's exactly the same except you don't have that dropper. But you can try to borrow somebody's or borrow the one that we have and then bring it back. All right? Any questions about the ink? No? Very good. I just wanted you to know about that dropper so that you wouldn't be using it and all of a sudden you just see this black line go across the classroom. All right. So we're going to start off with charcoal today. And I want to show you, we kind of talked about this on the very first day. I'm passing around these two pieces. The long, thin one, when it goes around, I want you to make a mark, just either on this sheet or on your actual tablet, somewhere inconspicuous in a far corner. And I want you to label them too so you can see the differences between them, all right? What I want you to do is make a plain mark, just like a line going down, and then the same thing with this piece, all right? You can try to go at an angle and make that line a little bit thicker. You can already see my fingers are getting dirty too. Crushed up, ground up, and compacted. And it gets really dark, it's really pressurized. So when we draw things that are really dark, like backgrounds, shadows, you want to use compressed charcoal. If things are really light and airy and real soft and delicate, you want to use that vine charcoal. All right? There's always that method to the madness. Don't go in and just start drawing, with that compressed charcoal. There are some disadvantages to only using this. Does anybody know what they might be?
Hard to erase.
Hard to erase. So if you want ghost lines and images in your artwork, you can use that. And that might be to your advantage. Who knows? There are some artists that actually incorporate that into the artwork. And while you guys are working, I'll pull up a video so you guys can see how they did this with animation. It's actually kind of cool. But with that compressed charcoal, nice dark lines. I like to use the side of it, filling in backgrounds. It makes it a lot easier instead of just going in with like a little line. You can even smudge them with the smudging tool, but you don't want to use your fingers to smudge. What was that? Oil. Oil on your fingers. It will actually rub it into the paper, and then when you go to erase it, you're just erasing your oil. You're smearing it even more onto your paper. So some people, they will actually use a dry paper towel, not wet like what I'm using, or they'll use a cloth and they actually just wrap their finger like this and then move it around. Then you still kind of get that sandpaper-like feel for that texture. When you're doing this on the computer, you can use that smudge tool and moving it around. It's kind of the same thing, but there's no oils. But does it have the same principle? That's what you guys get to learn. For those actual smudging sticks, the tortillions or the blending stumps, again, I do have those back here. All of those resources you will see in this drawer. I even have the erasers that you can use when you need to erase. This one has been nice and clean, this kneadable eraser. This one you can tell somebody used charcoal. Alright, so the way to clean this, they really have not cleaned this. My drawing students will have to deal with that. But you're just slowly sort of kneading it with your hands. And you can start to see how it lightens up a little bit more. It's not as black. It's just self-erasing almost. It won't be exactly the same color as this, but you'll get pretty close. So a lot of students, they'll be at home whenever it's really dirty, they're watching TV, just doing something real lazy. I can actually drill charcoal with you. That does not help. Make sure to take those out. You have charcoal in your eraser.
Take out shrapnel.
Exactly.
You got shot.
Also, you'll notice on those boxes, they are broken up into fine charcoal and compressed charcoal when you make your marks. But again, I have those erasers in there. And then my blending stumps that you guys can use. All right? So these are just ground up pieces of paper if you don't have one, or you've got the tortillion. I suggest a blending stump rather than the tortillion for charcoal. All right? If you're doing ink, you don't need to use this. Packs, you'll see those different nibs.
That's actually the exact same thing.
This one right here?
Yep.
And they come in different shapes for your stylus. Do you have this small, tiny little pencil one and then one that looks like this?
No, mine just came with one that looked like
These? Okay. So as you take a look around, we'll pass this around too. What I want you to do is don't bend it too far, but just take your finger and just lightly press right here. And you'll see the two parts in the middle split apart. And don't press it too much. Can you get it like that? That's nice too.
I have another nib, so I just didn't bring it.
I've got another one here. So I'm going to see if I can change it
I
out.
want one of those ones that looks like that.
This one's a little bit smaller. It's a little bit more of a fine tip. You can just barely see that. I'll just leave that one passing around. I don't know if you can catch that. It's so tiny.
So tiny.
But they do interchange. What you want to do is grasp it, not from that point. A lot of people actually stab themselves changing out that stylus. Yeah, it slides in. It has this little C shape. It just slides right into that actual part of the stylus right there. So you'll see different types, different sizes, as you can see. How it has that curve. It just goes in like that. And until parental vision, you can carve it down a little bit. Some of these tips are flat and some of them are pointed. If you need, parental guidance. But if you want to try out inks today, definitely grab one of these, and then later on when the ink is making its way around, just to make it does turn into this gelatinous form. It will get stuck in your hair, and it won't hurt.
You're not using my arm hair.
All right, so with that charcoal, hopefully you guys got to sample a little mark with that. But you can see how dark it is. You can even see some of the dust coming off. And then my light charcoal, I'll get a smaller piece. I'm going to do the same line. Is there any real difference between the two?
Yes.
What's the difference?
One's shade of black.
One looks darker than the other.
Shade's different. You can kind of see that up close, right? One is just a little bit darker. You can See that there?
This one also looks like it's a little thicker point.
Yeah, it's a lot smoother. Some people even sand the tips of their charcoal so they can get a nice fine point. When I learned in my atelier over in Europe, they made us grind them down. There were absolutely no, flat tips. They always had to be pointed when we drew. And so we had to sit there in front of a trash can and grind down the charcoal. Paper towels that you can use, these are a little bit harsher. But what I'm gonna do is, my hands are making too much of a mess. I'm blending them both in. Same amount of pressure. What's the difference now?
One's left.
And then the compressed that's on the left there is still present, right? Okay. So now we'll go back and we'll try to erase. I'm not blending, but I'm erasing. Same thing. There's that ghost image, that line, right?
It's the vine on the right, right?
Yeah, the vine's over here, compressed is over there. Or we say soft, because it's not compressed. Alright? Okay, so now we've used the eraser, we've used the paper towel. Now we're going to use the blending stump. I'm applying pressure, even pressure on both sides. Doesn't matter that the line is blending in, but notice the difference with the blending stump versus the paper towel. I get more lines present with the marks, right? This one is very soft. It's like that flow is kind of set back, on the computer, right? If you think about it, shifting back and forth. Now, put it over there, let's use my finger, because I know you guys are going to do it. In my drawing classes, I don't think I've mentioned yet, because you guys haven't done charcoal yet. For those of you that remember in my drawing class, if you use your fingers, what would I do?
Ripped it up.
I would rip up your drawing. I would come on and be like, oh, did you just use your fingers? And then everybody's like, bring it, Mr. Wagner.
I don't think anyone ever
Don't do it. Don't do it. And like, you have this whole drawing and then you just use your finger. Use the blending stump. Use the paper towel. And honestly, it's going to save you a lot of time and anguish. But now I'm going to use my finger. Okay, what's the difference?
Oh, yes.
Fingered flat.
Yeah. You kind of see, graphite does the same thing. Graphite does the same thing. Now, okay, let's go back. We talked about erasing. Hopefully I've pressed in enough.
With the oil from your finger though, it won't erase really that.
Truth come into play. Let's find out. All right, the other thing too I want to tell you about when you erase, because you don't get to think about this on the computer, are the shapes. Well, I guess you do. But you can actually shape your eraser. Let's say there's a real white line or a highlight on a sphere or something that you're drawing. You can make a shaped eraser and making those marks. And you can make it bent like this, so you can actually have your finger out and lightly erase. Instead of what you guys are normally used to, the back of a pencil and just erasing away. This is nice and soft, just kind of lightly feathering the eraser on the surface. You can shape it really into anything you want. I always like to turn it into sort of that little axe head, so then that way I can use it one way as a line, the other side as a flat, rework it each time, and do it that way. Some people, if they want to be really sort of materialistic and where their pieces are at, let's imagine this is my pencil in the classroom. They keep losing their eraser. If you lose it all the time, what have I just done? Yeah, and then I can erase this way. But what's the problem with that?
You can't really need it.
What happens when you start to press that eraser through? And you get this, and it starts to poke through, and then pointless. Well, I mean, it comes to it, but you get the idea. All right, so now let's go back. Let's try to erase those lines. Okay, so I've got this line right here. Is there any real difference? Remember here, I was blending in with a paper towel.
It's different.
If you look at where I blended in with my finger, it doesn't erase as much. But then with the blending on the stump, it's just a little bit darker. But I could sit there and I could keep erasing. If we just sit there and if I'm doing this like the entire class time, what do you think happens to the paper?
It's gonna wear.
Yeah, it starts to fall apart. the friction, the heat, it's no good.
Start to wear thin.
So think about how you erase, what you use to erase or blend, and all those marks. Okay? Any questions so far? Help rather than using the long ones. Again, method to the madness. If you're wanting to fill in a background, see all the charcoal that's coming off?
It's raining charcoal dust.
It's all on the floor now. I'll clean it. Don't worry. See what happened? I can actually blow that charcoal off. If I use that blending stump, then I'll have this nice uniform fashion. If I go in on one side with the soft, I go back in with the compress on the other side. Is there a difference?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So
Compressed
you
is
can
way
think
better.
about things that are farther in the back. Remember how we talk about cooler colors off in the distance? Darker values, maybe the light's not there. So you can make those transitions. Just like those value steps we did. You could do that with charcoal, all right? Now with calligraphy pens, it's a little different. How do you think you capture value in a calligraphy pen?
Like
Cross-hatching,
yeah.
what we call hatching. The more lines that are closer, it's darker. But this is what we just call hatching. All right. In this idea of cross-hatching, you can think of the hashtag, right?
Yeah.
Hatching and then cross-hatching. Non-crossed, crossed. Okay? Now, it doesn't have to be that perfect square. You can even cross-hatch like this with X's. But if you look up closely, you can see hashtag is just going in an angle, right? There's other ways to do this, not just with those lines.
Dots.
Dots, that's another one. Stippling. That sound will get annoying.
Especially when 20 of us do this.
But if let's say I was going to draw a sphere, and the light is hitting it on that side, right? You can get that idea of the sphere. It could be uniform where those dots are, right? It's up to you. Then there are other types of line marks that you can create. What is that? What would you call that?
Swirl.
The curlicue. The little pigtails, right? And the more and more they overlap. But it's got uniform movement.
Yep.
It's the same line. It's just over and over and over and over and over and over. So different objects can have different lines in their presentation. All right? As you can see right here, in that drawing, it's all linear. And there's a little bit of that hatching in the overlap. So think about overlap, right? You can also think about the size too, because not only did we have proximity with just these simple lines, I mean, we could have gone like this and then rotated that marker and I'd get a thicker line. So you can think about that when you have like different nibs or even in charcoal, you know, drawing like this versus like that. There are different ways to do this, all right? So I want you to think about, you know, which one would go with what. Backgrounds, I always say, use the side. Anything with a fine detail, use it like a point. Softer areas that are out of focus, use that soft vine charcoal. Make it disappear. You know, because everybody, when they try to create an image, they try to put everything in focus. When you take a picture, say of one person, what does the background usually look like?
It's a little blurred.
It's a little blurred, right? And then there are some people that have to have every single thing in focus. That's not how we look. Like I'm looking at you, Lindsay. Everybody else's face is kind of blurred out. I can't make out any details.
Yep.
But everybody, whenever they draw, everything has to be in exact detail. That's fine. But I want you to mess around with that with charcoal. Make the background seem a little fuzzy, a little blurry, a little hazy. All right? Any questions there?
And do that kind of with like a paper towel, like mat it.
Yes. Yeah. See, there's different ways to do that. Yeah. You can just use the blending stump, or you can take your paper towel and kind of blot it on top. It's whatever you want. All right? Okay. One last thing about charcoal. want to say it's in, it wasn't.
How about the hairspray?
Yes. All right, so we're not spraying that in here.
Of course not.
Okay, Aquanet hairspray. We talked about that the first time. This is our workable fixative. Since it's raining, we'll probably just leave them in here. But you gotta make sure you shake it up, because whatever chemical that they put in it, it does tend to settle. You can hear the little ball in there, make sure it's nice, you shake them up. You pull off the cap. Now these are actually for you guys to use whenever you do need to spray your drawing. When you are, say going home, you got it in your portfolio, and you don't want that paper to smudge against something else. Say, this is my large drawing tablet. Oh, look at all the charcoal I'm tracing everywhere. That's hilarious. All right, so let's say I put this in my portfolio and I've got my other assignment on top from Mr. Wagoner's drawing class. I'm going home, my side's hitting it, I put it in my car, a week goes by, and I do all this stuff, right?
And done.
It's no good, right?
Oh, darn it.
Yeah. So what do? Well, before you put it in that portfolio, you use your workable fixative. What that does is it seals it on the surface for a temporary state. See, here you can use your fingers. All right, so here's the sheet of paper. You've got your charcoal on top, and they put down all these little particles, and it fixes it to the page. A lot of people oversaturate it, and they will actually get dizzy or headaches from the fumes. When you spray it, yeah, or that. When you spray it, don't go that close. You want 6 to 12 inches away. You're just doing a light dusting, okay? Just give you a little example, all right?
Oh, thanks, now high.
Woo! That wasn't too bad. That was just enough, all right? But that does lightly spray it. It keeps it locked in. Don't just saturate that entire piece, all right? And then it will really glue that in, all right? So just remember, with that fixative, you can go downstairs on the first floor, spray it outside underneath the overhang since it's raining, and then let it sit out there a little bit. Sometimes I have students just kind of waft it just a little bit. It gets any remnants of the charcoal off the surface, chunks too, because when you start to turn it that way, you see it all fly down. Yes?
What's the shelf life on that stuff? Because I think I have some from like 3 years ago.
Well, this one, it actually does not say.
Cool.
It depends if it starts to yellow. This is my trick. So I take just a regular piece of printer paper. Of course, we wouldn't do it in here. We go outside, pick it up, and spray it. If it yellows your paper, it's no good. But if you want it to have that antique look, that's kind of cool. Some people like that. Whereas this will always yellow. It always will. But it's cheaper. $1.99, $7 to $14. Which would you buy?
Great.
Right? But here's the thing. When you spray it with this, she's recording, this is kind of a little trade secret. If you sell drawings to people and it yellows over time, it's expected anyway, right? The sunlight hitting the paper, it's going to age. This is just prematurely aging it. All right? That's okay. But you got to tell the people you're selling your artworks to, hey, I sprayed with this, it is going to age over time unless you coat it with a UV strength glass and blah, blah, blah. Right? So just keep that in consideration. There you go. Anything else? No?
I think
All right.
Lily just had us walk out in the hallway.
What's that?
I think Lily just had us walk out in the hallway for our
Oh, for yours? Yeah. You always go outside for that. Like I said, if you want to use that during class time, you can. All right, so for you guys, I just wanted to show you one little example, real quick, other ways to hatch. Again, some more examples here you can see. Again, look at the nice uniform lines and thinking about the different angles, whatever you're drawing. And here's an example. You can even look at some magazines whenever they show the profile of the author or writer. They have these nice little illustrations and pen and ink. They're actually, combining this hatching and cross-hatching technique. Back of a dollar bill is another one. You can see a lot of that lithography. It's kind of cool. You can try it out. It is hard to do at first, but you get a grasp of it if you keep practicing. Okay? So today, as you can see on that handout, you're going to be drawing